Good evening and welcome to the second part of teaching aptitude. So, the first slide is the maxims of teaching. Ever wondered why some lessons stick instantly while others just leave students staring blankly at the board? The difference isn't what you teach, it's how you guide their minds. As the famous quote at the bottom of the slide beautifully puts it, teaching is the art of leading minds from what they know to what they have yet to understand. Today we are breaking down the 8 maxims of teaching, the ultimate guide for anyone looking to master pedagogy, ace competitive exams, or simply become a legendary educator. Let's dive in without any delay. Number 1. From simple to complex. Look at the maths example. You don't drop a student straight into complex algebraic fraction on day 1. You definitely start with 2 plus 2 is equal 4. Build your confidence with simple truths before scaling the complexity. Number 2. From known to unknown. Always anchor new ideas to something they already understand. If you are introducing an unfamiliar concept, link it back to their home, their daily lives, or their current environment first, then step out into the unknown. Number 3. From seen to unseen. Start with a visible world that students can observe with their own eyes, like the eye icon next to number 3. Once they grasp the tangible reality right in front of them, you can safely guide them toward abstract, unseen, microscopic, or theoretical concept. Number 4. From particular to general. Don't start by throwing rigid, sweeping laws at the students. Show them particular examples first, like looking at a rose, a sunflower, and a daisy, and then let them form the general conclusion that all flowers share similar basic parts. Number 5, from whole to part. Look at the bicycle illustration. A child recognizes a bicycle as a whole machine first. Only after they understand its overall form and purpose do we break it down into its individual parts, the wheels, the chain, the handlebars. See the big picture first. Number 6. From concrete to abstract. Mental frameworks are built on tangible foundation. You start with concrete blocks you can touch and stack, like physical building materials, before expecting a student to comprehend abstract mental structures, formulas, or schemas. Number 7. From analysis to synthesis. Analysis means breaking a complex problem apart with a magnifying glass to understand its components. But you can't stop there. Synthesis is putting those puzzle pieces back together to form a complete unified understanding. Number 8, from psychological to logical. This is all about meet students where they are. You must cater to a learner's psychological state, their curiosity, reactions, and natural development before organizing the material into a strictly structured, formal, and logical system. So do let me know in the comment section which of these maxims do you find most powerful in your own teaching journey. Let me know in the comments below. So coming to the next slide. When we use the word teaching, we tend to think of it as a one single activity, but in reality, education is a vast spectrum. Depending on your objective, you might not just be teaching, you might be training, instructing, or unconsciously even indoctrinating. Today, we are diving deeply into the 4 teaching modalities that are training, development, instruction, and indoctrination. Understanding these distinctions is absolutely crucial for perfecting your pedagogy, designing flawless curriculums, or acing your next eligibility exam. Let's break them down. Number 1, training. First, let's look at training. If you see the illustration under the blue column in the image, it shows hands-on guidance like mechanics or technical practice. Training is all about building skills through practice and repetition to perform tasks effectively. It's behavioral, it's hand-on, and it focuses on performance. You train someone to operate machinery, write code, or master a laboratory technique. It's about efficiency and precision. Number 2, development. Secondly, We shift to the green column, which is shown as development. Look at the plant icon and the students studying independently. Development moves beyond just a specific task. It's about enhancing potential through growth, experience, and continuous improvement. While training focuses on the immediate skill, development nurtures the whole person, building long term cognitive capabilities, emotional maturity, and adaptive skills that prepare a learner for future challenges. Next up in orange is instruction. This is the classic classroom scene we have always come across, with an educator pointing to a whiteboard. Instruction is focused on transmitting knowledge and guiding learning through structured teaching and clear explanations. This is where structured intellect happens. It's the systematic presentation of facts, theories, and concepts, ensuring that information flows clearly from the educator or curriculum directly to the learner's intellectual framework. Finally, we have a critical, often controversial modality in the red column, that is, indoctrination. Notice the strong graphics there, the logs, the speech bubble reading one truth, no alternative, and a no questions tag. Indoctrination is the act of imposing beliefs without question, suppressing critical thinking and independent judgment. Unlike the other three modalities, which aim to expand or empower the mind, indoctrination seeks to close it around a single fixed ideology or dogma, entirely discouraging open critique. As educators, our ultimate mission is summed up beautifully at the very bottom: different paths, different methods, same goal, that is meaningful learning. True pedagogical mastery lies in knowing when to transition between these modalities. We use instruction to give them the data, training to build their practical skills, and development to help them think for themselves, while carefully avoiding the pitfalls of indoctrination so that critical thinking can thrive. So, which of these modalities do you find yourself utilizing the most in your classroom or study routines? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. Now, the next slide. Have you ever spent hours reading a textbook chapter only to close the book and realize you didn't absorb a single word? Don't worry, you are not alone. The problem isn't your intelligence, it's your strategy. To break out of that cycle, you need to unlock a powerful cognitive superpower. As the image states right at the top, we are talking about metacognition. To simply put it, it is thinking about thinking. Look at the illustration of the student in the top right. He isn't just staring at his notes, he is realizing, I'm not just learning, I'm thinking about how I learn. Today, we are breaking down the core concept, the three essential pillars, and exactly why metacognition is the ultimate game changer for your academic success. Let's get into it. The main goal of metacognition is to move students away from being passive consumers of information and turn them into active managers of their own brains. To do that, we rely on a continuous cycle called the three pillars of metacognition. Number one, planning. Planning happens before you even start a task. Look at the green panel in image. This is where you ask yourself intentional questions. What I am supposed to learn here? What strategies should I use? Am I going to take structured notes or should I use a mind map? You set a roadmap before you start driving. Next is monitoring, which takes place during the task. In the blue panel, you see a student actively assessing his progress with a magnifying glass. Here, you constantly check it in yourself. Is this making sense? Am I losing focus? Do I need to change my pace or try a different approach? If a strategy is not working midway through, you pivot. Number third, the loop finishes with evaluating, which happens after the task is done. In the orange panel, it's time to reflect. Did I achieve my goal? What worked well and what didn't? What will I do differently next time? This turns every study session into data for future improvement. So, why does this matter so much for competitive aptitude and teaching pedagogy? To break it down into four massive benefits: number one, it promotes autonomy; number two, it enhances problem solving; number three, it bridges the gap; and number four, it builds resilience. The next time you sit down to study or design a lesson, don't just go through the motions. Plan it, monitor it, and evaluate it. So, do let me know keep track of your own learning process? Do you use mind maps, active recall, or something else? So, think about the last thing you learned. Did you learn it because a teacher told you to? Because you needed it to solve a real world problem? Or because your own curiosity drove you to find it on the internet? Education isn't a one size fits all paradigm. As our minds mature, the entire way we acquire knowledge completely transforms. Today, we are diving to explore the three foundational teaching models: pedagogy, andragogy, and heutagogy. We will look at how we shift from being passive listeners to self determined lifelong explorers. Let's start with a model we all grew up with in column 1: pedagogy or teacher led learning. Traditionally aimed at children and young learners, the core idea here is that the teacher decides what, how, and when something is learned. The teacher acts as the director and the primary source of truth. As you can see under the learner role, students enter as passive receivers of knowledge with little life experience to draw from. Their motivation is driven by external forces like grades, parental approval, or just passing an exam. The primary focus here is straightforward knowledge transfer. But what happens when we grow up? We move to column number 2, andragogy or adult led learning, a concept popularized by Malcolm Knowles. Here, the teacher's role shifts drastically from a lecturer to a facilitator or guide. The target audience consists of adults and mature learners who bring a wealth of life experience to the table, serving as a rich resource for learning. Adults want to say in their own education, they are self directed and problem centered. They want to learn things that help them solve real world immediate problems. Their motivation comes from within, driven by self esteem, career growth, and quality of life. The ultimate focus shift to problem solving and application. Then we reach the peak of learning autonomy in column number 3, that is heutagogy or self determined learning. This is highly essential in our modern digital and internet age for autonomous lifelong learners. In this model, the learner is completely in the driver's seat. They don't just consume a curriculum, they decide the curriculum, choose their learning path, find resources, and even assess themselves. Look at the cycle around the student icon. I choose my path, I find resources, I apply and explore, I reflect and adapt, I assess my learning. The teacher merely provides the ecosystem. The focus here transcends simple knowledge. It is all about capability and adaptability, knowing how to learn and applying it to entirely unfamiliar situations. Moving on to the next slide. Think about the last time you truly learned something. Was it about memorizing a fact for a test, or did it completely change how you act, think, or look at the world? As the subtitle highlights, learning is not just acquiring knowledge, it is transforming life. But from a pedagogical and psychological standpoint, what is learning exactly? What is its hidden formula? What are its universal truths, and how does the brain navigate a learning cycle? Today, we are breaking down the complete anatomy of learning using this incredible framework. Whether you are an educator, a student preparing for competitive eligibility exams, or a lifelong learner, this breakdown is going to fundamentally change how you view education. Let's get started. So, now let's break down the 7 key characteristics of learning, the universal truths of how knowledge integrates into our lives. Number 1, continuous and lifelong. It begins at birth and ends only at death. It is a progressive, never ending process. Notice the graphic showing a child growing into an elderly person reading a book. Number 2, change. Learning naturally modifies old behaviors, habits, attitudes, and skills, replacing them with new, more adaptive ones, like a seedling growing into a flower. Number 3, purposeful and goal directed. Effective learning doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is always driven by a motive, a need, or a specific objective. You learn because you are aiming for a target. Number 4, universal. It is not confined to humans. All living organisms learn to adapt to their environments to survive, represented perfectly by the little dog graphic. Number 5, active process. True learning requires the active participation of the learner's mind and body. It cannot be passively poured or forced into a student's head while they stare blankly. Number 6, individual and social. While the psychological processing happens individually inside your own brain, learning is highly influenced by social interactions, cultures, and peers. We learn together. Number 7, transferable. This is massive for aptitude. Knowledge gained in one situation can be applied to solve problems in another context. Look at the arrows bridging math over to economics. Your foundational skills transfer across disciplines. Finally, how does learning actually take place? It happens through a continuous 6 stage learning process cycles that turns basic experience into lasting changes. Let's track the path. Number stage 1, motive or need. It all starts with an initial drive or an urge to learn something because you face a problem or a gap in knowledge. Number 2, goal. You identify a specific objective that you want to achieve to satisfy that need. Number 3, barrier. Then you hit a wall. A challenge or problem prevents immediate goal achievement, which triggers your brain's need to learn and adapt. Number 4, varied responses. To beat the barrier, you try different strategies, methods, and trial and error behaviors. Number 5, reinforcement. When one of those responses succeeds, it is repeated and strengthened. Success locks the behavior in. Number 6, integration. Finally, the successful new behavior becomes a permanent part of your habit and cognitive structure. The cycle is complete. So, which of the 7 characteristics resonates most with your own study style? Let me know in the comments below. So, have you ever noticed how some people can look at a single chart and immediately understand a complex trend, while others need to hear it explained out loud or literally build a model with their hands to grasp it? The human brain is beautifully diverse. If a student is struggling, it's rarely a lack of intelligence. It's usually a mismatch in how information is being delivered. Today, we are diving deep to map out the ultimate guide to learner types. We will cover the famous work model, move into cognitive and psychological classifications, and wrap up with pacing factors. Whether you are preparing for high stakes teaching eligibility exams or designing inclusive digital content, this breakdown is a playbook. Let's unlock it. The first is visual learners. You can see in the green column that it is related to seeing. These individuals learn through sight, images, diagrams, spatial understanding, and facial expressions. They prefer charts and maps, often thinking entirely in pictures. Your best teaching tools here are graphic organizers, slideshow, videos, and mind map. Next in blue are the auditory learners. They thrive through listening, speaking, and group discussion. They are highly sensitive to the tone of voice, pitch, and the speed of speech, and love reading aloud or explaining concepts to others. Tap into this style using lectures, podcasts, and audiobooks. Number third, write learners. Move to the purple column, we find read write learners. These students interact best with the printed world, text-based input and output. They live for reading books, writing essays, making detailed lists, and taking verbatim notes. Handouts, textbooks, and bulleted lists are their absolute comfort zone. Number 4. Finally, in orange, we have kinesthetic learners. This is all about hands-on experience, physical movement, and tactile manipulation. They learn best by doing, building, or touching and tend to get incredibly restless during long, static lectures. Engage them with laboratory experiments, field trips, role-playing, and physical notebooks. But learning styles are only half the story. Tier 2 of the image takes us into cognitive and psychological classifications as well, which deal with how minds perceive and organize information mentally. First, let's look at field independent versus field dependent learners. Field dependent learners are highly social and deeply influenced by their surrounding environment and context. They prefer collaborative, peer to peer learning and need global overviews. On the flip side, field independent learners are analytical and independent. They can easily separate a concept or part from its surrounding context and prefer structured, self paced individual tasks. Next to it, we see reflective versus impulsive learners. Reflective learners take their time. They ponder options, analyze deeply, and aim for absolute accuracy over speed. While impulsive learners respond quickly, they take immediate risk and prioritize speed, Though this rapid-fire approach means they may make more errors along the way. Lastly, at the bottom of the slide, we'll look at learner types based on social and pacing factors, which remind us that learners vary based on processing speed and socio-environmental needs. They are slow learners and gifted learners. Slow learners are the students with a slightly lower cognitive pace. They require repetitive instruction, simplified steps, and a little extra patience. But make no mistake, they're entirely capable of mastering the learning goals if given the right environment. Gifted learners are the students possesses an exceptionally high IQ or specific talents. They get bored incredibly easily with a standard slow curriculum. They need enrichment activities, challenging puzzles, or accelerated pacing to keep their minds engaged. When a student struggles to read, spell, or solve a simple math equation, it's easy for an untrained eye to mistake it for laziness or a lack of intelligence. But modern pedagogy and cognitive science tell an entirely different story. As the subtitle in the slide so beautifully states, not a lack of intelligence, a different way of learning. Today, we are using the comprehensive roadmap to explore the major types of learning disorders, look at related conditions that impact classroom success, and highlight actionable teaching strategies. Whether you are an educator designing an inclusive classroom or a scholar preparing for competitive tests, understanding this spectrum is vital. Let's break it down. First one is dyslexia. The core challenge here is difficulty with reading, spelling, writing, and pronouncing words. Symptoms include trouble matching letters to sounds, reversing letters like mistaking a B for D or saw for was, and a slower reading speed. Teaching strategy could include you can use multisensory reading materials, audiobooks, and grant extra time during assessment. Next is dysgraphia. This centers on writing difficulties, specifically impaired handwriting, orthographic coding, and finger sequencing. Look for symptoms like illegible handwriting, inconsistent spacing, and massive difficulty copying text from a board. Here the teaching strategy could be allow oral exams, introduce speech to text tool, or permit keyboard use. Third in green is dyscalculia. This involves difficulty understanding numbers, symbols, structures, and mathematical concepts. Students often struggle with counting, forgetting basic maths facts like multiplication tables, and even telling time or understanding bigger versus smaller quantities. The teaching strategy could include implement concrete objects like blocks or beads, visual charts, and calculators. Fourth in purple is dyspraxia, which affects fine and or gross motor skills. It's also known as developmental coordination disorder. Symptoms manifest as general clumsiness, difficulty balancing, trouble using scissors, or struggling to hold a pencil correctly. Teaching strategy could provide a specialized pencil grips, use adaptive tools, and a place heavy focus on oral participation rather than just writing tests. Moving to the next section of this slide, we encountered related conditions that impact learning. First one is ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, marked by signs of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. Number two is aphasia or dysphasia. These are language disorders where the core challenge is understanding spoken language or expressing thoughts verbally. So, when we spot this, we step into, like an educator, we should be patient enough and deeply empathetic, use multisensory teaching methods, provide tailored accommodations and praise small successes, encourages their unique strengths and hidden talents while working closely with parents and specialists. So, coming to the next slide. Have you ever wondered how information travels from a textbook through a student's senses and eventually transforms into a permanent mental schema? Designing a great lesson isn't just about speaking clearly, it's about aligning your teaching with the deep psychological architecture of how the human brain actually assesses reality. Today, we are breaking down the five foundational learning theories. First up, in column 1, we have Bloom's taxonomy, which classifies educational objectives into levels of complexity and specificity. It splits tasks into lots, that is lower order thinking skills, and HOTS, higher order thinking skill. Let's scale the pyramid from the base up, starting from remembering, then understanding, then applying, then analyzing, then evaluating and creating. Next, look at column number 2, Gagne's 9 levels of instruction. This is a systematic design model based on the information processing view of learning. If you want a perfect instructional design flow, you will follow these 9 steps. First, gain attention. Number 2, inform learners of objectives. Number 3, stimulate recall of prior learning. Number 4, present a content. Number 5, provide learning guidance. Number 6, elicit performance. Number 7, provide feedback. Number 8, assess performance. And number 9, enhance retention and transfer. Moving to column 3, we hit David Kolb's experiential learning theory, which views learning as a continuous cycle where knowledge is created through the transformation of direct experience. It operates in a 4-stage loop. Stage 1, concrete experience. Stage 2, reflective observation. Stage 3, abstract conceptualization. And stage 4, active experimentation. Now let's step into developmental psychology with section 4, that is Piaget's cognitive developmental theory. Piaget posits that children actively construct an understanding of the world around them, experiencing discrepancies between what they already know and what they discover. First, look at his key concepts. Schemas are the mental building blocks of knowledge. Assimilation is fitting fresh information into existing schemas, and accommodation is altering those schemas when new information just doesn't fit. Piaget maps these out four developmental stages. Number 1, sensorimotor, which covers the age of 0 to 2. The child explores the world through senses and actions, slowly achieving object permanence. Number 2, pre-operational that covers the age from 2 to 7. Symbolic thinking and language bloom, but reasoning is still highly egocentric and lacks logical consistency. Number 4, concrete operational that covers from 7 years to 11 years. Logic takes root. Children began to think logically about concrete events and master the concept of conversation. Number 4, formal operation, that is 11 years and plus. The peak of cognitive development, abstract, hypothetical, and highly systematic reasoning develops. Finally, we have section 5, cooperative learning theory, rooted deeply in Lev Vygotsky's social constructivism. It posits that learning is maximized and students work together in structured, heterogeneous small groups to achieve a shared academic goal. According to Johnson and Johnson, it relies on 5 essential elements. Number 1, positive independence. Number 2, individual and group accountability. Number 3, face-to-face interaction. Number 4, interpersonal and small-scale groups. Number 5, group processing. So think about the smartest person you know. What makes them smart? Is it because they can solve complex equations in seconds? Because they can write a moving poem? Or because they can walk into a crowded room and instantly read everyone's emotions? For a long time, the world defined intelligence by a single rigid IQ test score. But human potential is far too rich to be reduced to a solitary number. So today we are unpacking to explore Howard Gardner's groundbreaking multiple intelligence theory. We will break down the 8 unique types of intelligence, examine the core concept, discuss the educational implications, and look at even the major criticisms. So let's look at the foundational facts in section 1. Proposed by Howard Gardner, an American developmental psychologist from Harvard University, this theory was introduced in 1983 in his seminal book, Frames of Mind, The Theory of Multiple Intelligence. So, Gardner heavily critiqued the traditional G-factor or general intelligence view, arguing that IQ tests measure only a narrow range of linguistic and logical abilities. Instead, he defined intelligence as a biopsychological potential to process information that can be activated in a cultural setting to solve problems or create products of value. So now let's break down the core frameworks. Number 1, verbal linguistic. Sensitivity to spoken and written language, mastery of syntax, semantics and phonology. Representative professions like poets, novelists, lawyers and journalists. Number 2, logical mathematical. The ability to analyze problems logically, carry out math operation, investigate scientifically and detect patterns. Representative professions include scientists, mathematicians and engineers. Number 3, visual spatial. recognizing and manipulating patterns of white space, thinking in images and three dimensions. Representative professions include architects, pilots, sailors, and painters. Number 4, bodily kinesthetic, using one's whole body or parts of the body to solve problems or create products involving high physical coordination. Representative professions include athletes, dancers, surgeons, and craftspeople. Number 5, musical rhythmic, excellence in performance, composition, and appreciation of music, along with sensitivity to pitch, melody, and rhythm. Representative professions include musicians, composers, and sound engineers. Number 6, interpersonal, the capacity to understand the intentions, motivations, desires, and feelings of others, working effectively with them. Representative professions include teachers, counselors, politicians, and salespersons. Number 7, intrapersonal, looking inward. Understanding oneself, appreciates one's own feelings, fears, and motivations, and using that info to guide one's life. Representative professions include philosophers, spiritual leaders, and psychologists. Number 8, naturalistic, recognizing and classifying flora, fauna, and other elements in nature, maintaining a deep connection with the environment. Representative professions include biologists, botanists, and environmentalists. So, how does this transform a classroom? Section 4 outlines the massive educational implications. Pluralization of instruction, differentiated assessments, and individualization. However, a great academic discussion requires objectivity, and Section 5 details the major criticisms from the scientific community that are lack of empirical evidence, talent versus intelligence, and the intercorrelational factor. So, have you ever wondered how your brain manages to remember a phone number just long enough to write it down, keep track of what you read a few seconds ago, and yet somehow perfectly retain the vivid imagery of your 10th birthday party? Memory isn't a single uniform bucket where we throw our thoughts. As the quote in the top right of the slide beautifully puts it, memory is not a single thing, but a system with multiple stages and processes. Today we are using the definitive roadmap, also known as the stage model. We will trace how data travels from the environment through our senses into a working mind and finally into permanent storage. So let's start at the absolute beginning of the pipeline, that is sensory memory. This is the early stage where sensory information from the environment is stored for a very brief flash of time. Its duration is incredibly short, just milliseconds to a few seconds, but its capacity is quite long. However, if you don't immediately pay attention to it, it fades rapidly, and it contains three major subtypes based on our senses, that is iconic memory, which is related to visual, and that is for about zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.4 seconds. It's like a lightning fast mental snapshot. Number 2 is echoic memory, which is related to auditory. It retains sound echoes for about 3 to 4 seconds, which is exactly what allows us to perceive continuous connected speech. And number third is haptic memory, that is tactile, retains touch sensation for roughly 1 to 2 seconds. If the brain decides an environmental stimulus is important, attention selects it and it moves directly to the next stage. So stage 2 brings us to short-term memory and working memory. When attention is paid to a stimulus in sensory memory, the information moves here. Standard STM has a duration of about 15 to 30 seconds without active rehearsal. Its capacity is strictly limited. But modern cognitive science expands this into working memory, specifically the famous Baddeley and Hitch models shown in the green center block. Working memory is an active workspace where information is actively manipulated, governed by central executive control system that directs attention and coordinates three subcomponents. That is phonological loop, visual spatial sketchpad, and number third episodic buffer. When information is deeply processed, elaborately rehearsed, or emotionally charged, it undergoes encoding and moves into the holy grail of storage, that is long-term memory. Long-term memory has an unlimited capacity and can last for months, years, or even a lifetime. As mapped out in the slide, it is broadly divided into two major branches. Branch 1, that is explicit, or we can say declarative memory. This involves conscious, intentional recollection of actual information, life experiences, and concepts. It splits further into episodic memory, memory of personal experiences and specific life events tied to a particular time and place. Semantic memory, memory of general knowledge, facts, concepts, and meanings independent of personal experience. Branch B is implicit or non declarative memory. This operates entirely without conscious awareness, influencing our thoughts and actions automatically. It includes procedural memory, that is memory for how to perform physical actions, motor skills, and habits. Second is priming, an enhanced ability to identify or process a stimulus due to recent subliminal exposure to it. And number third is classical conditioning, implicit association between these two stimuli causing an automatic behavioral responses like salivating when you hear a lunch bell. If we look at the flow of information banner at the bottom left, the complete loop becomes incredibly clear. Environmental stimulus, right arrow sensory memory, right arrow short-term working memory, right arrow long-term memory. And when you need that information later, you perform retrieval, that is, bringing the data back from LTM into your active working memory. Let's cement the key points to remember from the red box. Information is lost unless it is attended to. Rehearsal keeps transfer information from short-term memory to long-term memory. Deep processing, like attaching meaning, elaboration, and association, creates durable, unshakable memories. Forgetting can happen at any stage if the information decays or faces interference. So, coming to the next slide. Have you ever wondered how your brain manages to remember a phone number? So next we have the transfers of learning. So what is it? Coined by the early psychologists Edward Thorndike and Robert S. Woodward, the core mechanism is to bridge past learning with future application. There are like three core types of transfer of learning. Number one is positive transfer. Prior learning helps, facilitates, or accelerates learning of a new skill or knowledge. For example, a piano player learns harmonium faster due to shared musical concepts and finger coordination. Number two, negative transfer. Prior learning hinders, interferes with, or delays learning of a new task. For example, a driver from India struggles initially with left-hand drive car on the right-hand side road in the USA. And number third is zero transfer. Prior learning has absolutely no effect, neither positive or negative, on a new skill. For example, proficiency in swimming has zero impact on the ability to learn poetry. And we have the advanced subtypes of transfer of learning as well, that is, by complexity, by cognitive depth, and by direction. Lastly, we have major theories of transfer of learning. Number one is Edward Thorndike's theory of identical elements, Charles Judd theory of generalization of experience, and number third is Gestalt theory. So, moving on to the next slide, think about your own university days. Did you spend most of your semester sitting in a massive lecture hall silently copying notes off a whiteboard, or were you actively debating, solving real world crises, and designing your own projects? Today, we are going to analyze the teacher centric models with modern learner centric frameworks, and we will break down exactly how structural reforms like the CBCS are codifying this evolution in higher education. Let's start on the left side of the slide with traditional teacher centric methods, where the teacher leads and the students primarily receive information. This panel highlights four classic approaches. Number one, lecture method. This is purely expository, one way delivery of structured content. Number two, demonstration method. Here the teacher shows how something works while the students observe. Number third, team teaching, a variation where a group of teachers jointly plans and delivers a course to a large class, leveraging multiple faculty specialization, but the structural delivery remains top down. Number four, direct instruction. These are highly scripted, teacher guided, skill drill sessions designed to build foundational mastery through direct repetition and immediate correction. Now let's cross the bridge to the green panel, learner-centric methods. Here the paradigm flips. Students explore, collaborate, and actively create knowledge. Look at the six highly effective strategies mapped out here. Number one is project method. Students solve a real-world problem through a purposeful hands-on activities, driving their own research and producing a tangible final output. Number two, problem-based learning. Learning is initiated not by a lecture but by a complex, unstructured real world problem. Students must diagnose what they need to know to solve it. Number third is heuristic method. This literally places the student in the position of an independent discoverer or researcher. It emphasizes self-discovery, critical inquiry, and minimal teacher intervention. Number fourth is discussion or seminar method. Co-creation of meaning through collaborative dialogue. Students actively present, defend ideas, and challenge concepts within an open forum. Number fifth, assignment and case studies. Independent or group investigation of specific real world scenarios, forcing students to apply theoretical models to chaotic practical situations. And number six, flipped classroom, a massive modern favorite, a blended strategy where students study foundational material at home using videos or readings and use precious class time for active problem solving, debates, and peer interaction. But how do higher education system makes this shift official? This brings us to the bottom half of the slide and the implementation of the choice-based graded system, that is CBCS. In higher education, the implementation of CBCS is a direct policy-driven shift from a rigid teacher-centric model to a highly learner-centric model. It completely shatters the old restrictive STEAM system by offering students incredible flexibility in choosing interdisciplinary courses. As the infographic highlights, there are five core ways CBCS empowers learner. Number one is choice and flexibility. Number two, interdisciplinary learning. Number third, self-paced growth. Number four, multiple entry and exit. And number five, skill and career readiness. Coming to the next slide, we should know teaching has never been just about the spoken word. From ancient classroom to modern smart hubs, educators have relied on a changing toolkit to make education concept visible, tangible, and permanent. Today we are breaking down to explore the historical evolution of teaching support system, examine how we classify teaching aids by sensory organs, and dive deep into Edgar Dale's famous code of experience. So let's start with section 1, the historical evolution. As the infographic maps out, the tools teacher use can be classified into three distinct historical eras or models based on the nature of the tools used. Number 1, traditional support system. This era relies heavily on low-cost, non-electronic materials. It requires physical proximity and is highly teacher-centric. Key tools include the classic blackboard or chalkboard, textbook, printed charts, physical maps, globes, flip charts, models, and real biological specimens. Its core function is acting as a static visual aid to supplement oral lectures. Number B, modern support system. This model introduced electronic and electromechanical devices to the classroom, bridging the gap between abstract concepts and concrete understanding. Key tools featured overhead projectors, slide projector, tape recorders, educational television broadcasts, and printed workbook. Its core function is enhancing auditory and visual stimulation, making large group instruction significantly more efficient. And number C, we have ICT-based support system. This is our contemporary paradigm. It is digital, interactive, often network driven, and highly learner centric. It enables both synchronous and asynchronous learning. Key tools include smart boards, learning management system, educational apps, virtual labs, interactive simulation, and massive digital repositories. Its function is promoting the individualization of learning, flexibility, and global accessibility. But history is only one way to look at these tools. How do our brains actually process them? That brings us to the classification by sensory organs involved, shown on the right. We divide teaching aids into four distinct categories. Number one, audio aids. Number two, visual aids. Number three, audiovisual aids. And number four, activity aids. Now, let's look at the ultimate psychological framework for teaching aid, that is Edgar Dale's cone of experience, located at the bottom left of the slide. This model classifies teaching support system based on the nature of the learning experience, moving from the highly concrete at the bottom to the completely abstract at the top. Look at what we tend to remember after 2 weeks based on how we interact with information. At the very top, we remember just 10% of what we've read, that is, like textbook and verbal symbols, and 20% of what we hear, like lectures or audio symbols. This involves passive involvement. Moving down to the middle, we remember 30% of what we see and 50% of what we hear and see simultaneously. Stepping into the active zone, we remember a massive 70% of what we say and write. At the absolute base, We retain stunning 90% of what we say and do as we simulate their real experience or do their real thing. This is the simulated experience and direct purposeful experience is entirely driven by action and direct participation. As Edgar Dales famously quoted at the bottom of the pyramid, I see and forget, I hear and I remember, I do and I understand, I teach and I master. And now, moving towards the last slide of today's lecture, here is an engaging, academically rigorous slide. So, when a student gets a 75 out of 100 on a test, is that a measurement, an assessment, or an evaluation? Believe it or not, these three words do not mean the same thing, and confusing them can completely derail an instructional plan. Educational assessment isn't just about assigning grades at the end of a semester, it's about gathering data to improve how we teach and how students grow. As the inspiring quote near the bottom of the slide beautifully highlights, good evaluation doesn't prove what students know, it improves what they will become. Today we are unpacking a clear line between measurement, assessment, and evaluation. We will explore the types of evaluation based on timing and nature of reference, check out quantitative versus qualitative tools, and review how evaluation directly fits into structural systems like the CBCS. Let's unlock the science of grading. So first we have measurement. This is the quantitative assignment of numbers to a student's performance. It answers the questions how much. Remember this, how much. For example, scoring 75 out of 100 on a test. It is purely data driven and objective. Number two is assessment. This is the process of gathering, reviewing, and interpreting evidence about student learning over time to map out performance. It answers the questions how well. Here, do remember the quote unquote how well. Example, regular quizzes, portfolio reviews, and progress checks that provide actionable feedback. And lastly come evaluation. This is a broader value-based judgment using both qualitative and quantitative data to make a final decision. It answers the question quote unquote what value. For example, deciding promotion, certification, or program success. To make an evaluation effective, the core characteristics you must memorize is number one, validity, number two, reliability, number three, objectivity, number four, practicability, and number five, comprehensiveness. Now let's move to the section 2, that is types of evaluation. This is broken down across direct lunches. First, placement evaluation, done before instructional processes begin to determine initial entry before prerequisite skills or existing knowledge. For example, entrance exams like JNU, DU, or top tier eligibility tests like JEE, NET, GATE. Number two, formative evaluation, conducted during the instructional process to monitor learning, provide ongoing feedback, and improve teaching learning strategies. Examples, quizzes, oral assignment, observation, and peer feedback. Number third, diagnostic evaluation, conducted during or when persistent difficulties arise, aiming to uncover the root causes of repeated failures or learning bottlenecks. For example, specialized diagnostic tests or psychological profiles. Number four, summative evaluation, conducted at the end of an instructional unit, semester, or academic year to judge terminal achievements against standard benchmark, for example, end-term exams, board exam, or final dissertation defenses. Secondly, based on nature of reference, we have normed reference evaluation and criterion reference evaluation. Moving on to NRT, that is norm reference evaluation. Performance is compared against a peer group or national norm. It aims to rank students or determining percentile ranks. Key indicators like a student learns where they stand relative to others, for example, UGC NET, CAT, JEE, or any competitive ranking exam. Criterion Reference Exam (CRT), where performance is evaluated against a predetermined absolute criterion or set standard of mastery. Key indicator: a student learns how much of the domain they have mastered regardless of how others perform. Examples: a driving test, a school pass mark of 40%, or eligibility benchmarks like CTET. So how do we actually harvest this data? Section 3 highlights the teaching techniques and tools of evaluation, dividing them into two major tracks, qualitative and quantitative. Moving on to quantitative, this focus strictly on objectivity, numbers, and hard data. They include written test, practical examination, oral test. Moving on to qualitative data, this focus heavily on observing processes and behavioral patterns over time. They include observation, anecdotal records, cumulative records, checklists and rating scales, and portfolios. Finally, Section 4 connects these principles to modern structural reform, specifically the CBCS. CBCS shift higher education from a rigid teacher-centric model to a flexible learner-centric model, relying on structured evaluation across three course types, that is core courses, elective courses, and ability enhancement courses. When we integrate proper measurement, assessment, and evaluation, we achieve the global goals laid out at the very bottom line. Evaluation isn't just a gatekeeper at the end of a semester, it is the ultimate diagnostic mirror of an educator. By balancing quantitative tools with qualitative insights and formative feedback with summative benchmarks, we transform grading into truly mentoring. Which type of evaluation do you think is most effective for deep learning? Do you prefer the absolute standards of criterion reference test or the competitive edge of norm reference frameworks? Let's spark a debate in the comment section below.